What we're going to talk about today are really where the opportunities lie and lay. I never get that right. Which is it, lie or lay? But the idea here is that there are trends that we're going to map to from an innovation perspective, and then identify the technologies that might actually be applicable. So we think about what is the store of the future, not simply the four walls, but what's the experience of the store? Is it actually retail, or is it entertainment? Is it some combination? So what does that look like? What's the consumer experience in there? Is it a platform? If you saw the news recently, LVMH is coming up with a luxury marketplace. It's not selling just their own products, but other people's products as well. Neiman's does that. A number of companies now are selling product that's not their own. Brands are doing that. Theory sells Common Project shoes. So the idea that you're selling a platform that you're actually providing, as Amazon does, a marketplace of not just your own products, is pretty crucial to what brand and image and retail is going forward. The third is that the store becomes a plant, and we'll actually get into that a little bit. But the manufacturing plant of the future is not necessarily in China. It's not necessarily lots of machines going 24/7. And what does that look like? And lastly, store to the customer. One of the arguments we're going to make is that the most important commodity in today's economy at a personal level is what? Money or time? Time. No question. So every time we ask someone to drive to a store, to go into some four walls somewhere, park a car, do whatever they've got to do to get into your establishment, is that a good use of their time? And is there a better way for the store, in some cases, to go to the customer? And I don't mean just e-commerce, because e-commerce is around, but the idea that the store itself, the brand, actually gets very close to the customer. Okay? So I thought what we'd do is start on the tech trends that we're seeing and how it relates to, in this case, stores experience. I'm going to let Scott kind of kick this off with chatbots and such.
Okay, great. So, and to address the previous slide, I'm going to tell you that we approach it as customer of the future, and then let those other things, I think, fall into place. So that's where I begin. So yeah, Pano and I talked about this last week. What did we want to talk about? And we decided that we'd talk about some of these hot topics, these hot innovation topics, and sort of debate. Is it a thing or is it a flash in the pan? And what is the interest in this? And top of the list this year has been all about chatbots and AI. I came into the conversation, saying it's of great interest to us. We've seen a huge, increase in the number of solution providers out there that either have or claim to have technology that can help us deploy chatbot and AI, and we've been thinking hard about it, and I bet a lot of people here in the room are either doing it or thinking about doing it, and looking into what's going on in this scene. So the picture shows a little demo I put together for our executives as I kind of pushed the idea of should we do this as a project, as an example. And we started simple in our example, which was kind of a Facebook Messenger play with one of the partners that interested us, doing service-based, where's my order, or I need to return something, these sorts of basic customer service functions. But I think what really interests us is well above that. I think that's just sort of the playground starting point, to go get our toes, wet with the technology. I think what really is interesting, at least to me, is the potential for this technology to, actually, play a deeper part of the customer shopping journey, and to play a role as she's maybe even actually in the store and has questions. Could this kind of technology, be, a part of that? Is it ready? Is it ready for that, or is it going to be like those old IVRs that we all got on and were frustrated with it the first few seconds of having to work our way through the menu? And I kind of think of this chatbot thing as sort of the the IVR is the great grandfather, right? Of where we are to getting to today with this technology.
So completely agree that messaging, we would not use the. I think chat is an interesting challenge because chatbots have actually had kind of their day in the sun. They've already died off. Facebook has been trying to promote them, and they haven't done very well. A couple reasons, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But does anyone think that messaging is not a user interface that everyone needs to address? Like, we don't know any child, adult, whatever you want to call us these days, that doesn't use messaging as your first and primary platform. Even more so, I mean, if you have kids, good luck leaving a voicemail for them, right? Or trying to get them on the phone. So it's not just millennials, it's just efficient. You know, probably each of us are texting right now saying, what a boring presentation this guy's giving, you know? But you can do that in text, and you can do it anonymously and quietly. And so there's a great value to giving customers an interface that they want, not the interface that you want. And too many retailers tried the mobile app route and realized we really aren't very good at this. And our users aren't using it. Adoption rates at other retailers, not Neiman Marcus, but it's maybe 4%. Which is terrible. These are people.
I don't know what our percentage is, you know, and I'd say we're pretty good at it. I mean, you know, I think our mobile app is actually pretty good, right. But we still have problems with adoption in the app, even when it's a good app.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you put a lot of time and investment. I heard that Macy's has 1,700 developers. No offense to Macy's people here, but 1,700 developers working on their mobile app and mobile web interface, which is a crazy number, considering that messaging can do a lot for you just by not forcing any sort of download and any sort of difficulty, and there's no training, right? It's really easy to ask questions. So I think we're in agreement as an experience, consumers really do want ease of use, simplicity, and give them what they already use, which is messaging. The challenge, I think, is that Facebook has kind of come out of the gates as being the entry point, and we don't agree at all. So we don't agree for a number of reasons. One is probably the most important is you don't know your data. Facebook owns it. So forget, you know, likes and, you know, ad spend and click-throughs. At the end of the day, when someone says, do you have the blue dress or black dress and does it cost $5, all that data is sitting inside Facebook's databases, and you actually don't have access to it. So here it is, your customer is engaging with you, and you don't have access to that information on an archival basis to actually data mine it, work with that customer further. So it's kind of like, it's really pretty disintermediating. I don't know, Scott, do you have any thoughts on that besides what I just said?
Well, I can tell you what interested us about Facebook Messenger, you know, early on in this discussion, and that is, you know, because of the issues you have with adoption of your own branded app, or at least we've seen some issues with it. You know, we were really looking at, so, you know, how do we get into the apps that are on everybody's phone and that they're using every day all the time? And Facebook certainly is, you know, at or near the top of that list.
Right.
You know, for a lot of people. So, you know, I think that was the interesting part. But, you know, as this gets good enough to just be an SMS, you know, play, you know, part of just, you know, the normal texting, that's fine. You know, we can live there as well, I think, you know, with this technology. Yeah,
and one of the things with Facebook chat is that you actually have to, quote unquote, download the app as well. You have to find it on Facebook Messenger, which is a pain in the neck anyway, and then you've got to kind of like select it and then start using it. So it's not as easy as a mobile app once you have it. You always have to go back and search for it again. And frankly, everyone knows how to SMS, right? Messaging is just standard fare. So we think actually that this conversational commerce concept is you're going to natively communicate via SMS. And the second part of that conversation is that the AI, so it's very difficult to put AI necessarily inside Facebook, as you can imagine. But SMS in this case can have a full back-end AI architecture so that they can answer a lot of the questions without human intervention.
I think, you know, and I think that the goal in our case anyway is not to take the human customer service agent out of the mix, but instead give them bring them in when the question gets complicated, right? You know, for the easy things, this sort of technology, you know, could help, you know, lift some of the load. And allow my my live agents to actually concentrate on more difficult problems and, you know, be able to service more customers in a better way. So I've always envisioned it as this was sort of the front end, and that when you needed it, there was a live agent able to step in, could see the context of the conversation and properly take over, from the technology.
Yeah, where the tech is today, maybe 70% of the questions can get answered that way. The other 30% need to be routed to customer service or support. And you want that, right? You want that ability to kind of navigate. The second part of this is actually text becomes a user interface inside the corporation. Someone was mentioning at the CIO panel, which I thought was pretty interesting, that people were using Slack and they didn't even know it. Slack is effectively a messaging platform. It's not text messaging, but it's messaging. And the idea here that you can actually use text chat to actually talk to your data is the next wave of messaging and interfaces to data. That you won't actually be stuck with user interfaces, and if you've ever tried to use some Tableau or some of the really complicated dashboards where the IT department has to create the dashboard for you, and then you use it, and oh my gosh, you got to change it. It becomes really a pain in the neck. You want to be able to just query the system in English, and an example here is something like saying, can you tell me what the sales were this year? Or how many red sneakers did we sell? Or what kind of clothing? And that the AI will actually interpret your English, turn it into data, look at the data, actually convert it to data queries, and pull the data out of your databases. So the whole idea that the user can just communicate naturally and normally, whether it's a customer in a store or it's you, the customer in an enterprise, gets to be really, really interesting. So you just find this kind of capability coming down the pike. It's crazy. These happen to be Princeton engineers, 4 people out of Google they understand the data and they understand text messaging and the AI in between it. It gets really, really interesting. Any questions on chatting before we move on? The whole text area? Yeah.
So relative to speaking with this, and even using this, when you look at AI and products that do that, Siri, Alexa, a lot of the issues is like you have to kind of speak to them in a syntax of words. You can't speak naturally to them. You have to kind of ask them specific things in specific orders for them to do things. How do you think that can be solved through the changes that these software updates can implement, and what the go-forward strategy on making it more natural?
Right. So the question posed was, how natural can this really get? Because if you have to talk in stilted language, then you're defeating the whole purpose of using a text environment to start with. This team actually did a very large project for a telecommunications company, and they mapped out all the queries that have been asked over the past 5 years. Some crazy number of queries, right? What is this? What is that? How many of this? How many of that? Whatever the query was. And it came down to 200 syntactical concepts. And I'm not a syntax major, so a semantics major, but when you do a lot of work in natural language processing, and then you do a lot of work in AI, you have to understand what your taxonomies are and what you're working with. The problem with Alexa is you can ask it anything. Literally anything. And of course, there's no context, right? So it doesn't know what you're talking about half the time. But in this kind of environment, you're already kind of in a certain universe. And so it gets a lot easier to ask the question and also for them to map the queries that might come back. So it's more of a defined problem set than the infinity of Alexa, or more importantly, Siri, which is just crazy to try to map to. Yeah.
Look, I would add, we're not at the state of the art for this yet, right? It continues to evolve. There's a lot of smart people out in the world, building, these systems and solutions for this. I'm constantly bombarded, with solution providers that, want to come in and show, how great their particular solution is. And I've seen some really good ones. I've seen some bad ones too, but I've seen some really good ones. I think this continues to, evolve, at the rate that we've seen technology evolving lately. It's going to hit faster than you think. And I think you're going to get to, being able to naturally speak with these interfaces sooner, than you might expect.
Do you think it's going to stay with text once you get to that, or do you think it's going to go to voice? Why would you have Alexa?
Yeah, I think there'll be a place for both. I think there's a place for both. If you've solved one, you've worked on the other as well.
Yes.
So the question is around SMS and messaging. Other ways retailers can use it. So using SMS for promotions, geofencing close to your store, and that. What's your take on engaging customers with SMS that way?
Well, geofencing requires opt-in. So you really can't talk to a customer unless they're already conversing with you, which means you've crossed a hurdle that most retailers haven't crossed yet, which is getting a mobile phone number. Or an opt-in application that allows them to ping each other and talk. So to us, the first step in this process is the first question that a customer asks, are they getting an answer, and how are they asking it? So if it's, where's the red hammer? And you can answer via text messaging. Our argument, at least short term, is that digital-first models like that, where there's no application interface, there's no download, that starts the conversation, and then it's easier then to say, can I have your phone number? Can we continue this dialogue? And most customers want that because they're in your store for a reason, to find whatever they're looking for in most cases. You might feel differently.
Well, I mean, from our perspective, right, we've always been sort of this white glove, high touch, relationship-based business. So when we gave all of our sales associates iPhones, it's been quite a while now, 7 years ago, whenever it was that we did it, we immediately, started building, this, beautiful CRM app, for the sales associates, with the whole idea of them being able to leverage, what the smartphone, is great at, which is it's great at being a communication tool. We weren't really, and we could have it as an app platform, for our sales associates. So, SMS communication to customers has been part of our, sort of our normal communication process for several years now. And it is important that it's opt-in because you've got some customers that, want that and want that, kind of high-touch relationship with their sales associate, and there's others that aren't. You're going to necessarily, that's going to be bothersome to them, right? So you have to be respectful, to the customers, how the customer actually wants to communicate with you.
So we could spend 45 minutes just on this, but we're going to move on to visual search. Does anyone use visual search today? Do you even know what I'm talking about, right? So Pinterest actually has released their visual search engine where you can search via images instead of via text. So Scott, you should kick this off because you actually have this implemented already.
Yeah, so we have had this for a couple of years now. So it's called Snap Find Shop, and we did drop a little video in that'll explain it, I think.
For you, dressing is an art form, an expression of creativity. So when you see a style you love, don't let the moment get away. Just snap, find, and instantly shop for it on the Neiman Marcus app. Now you can take a picture of any item that captures your eye. From shoes and handbags to dresses and accessories, we'll find a match. Take a picture at a party, in a magazine, or choose a pic directly from your camera roll. With Snap Find Shop, your photo will be matched to the style you can't live without. Snap Find Shop by Neiman Marcus. Download the Neiman Marcus app on the Apple App Store.
And you got a promo out of it too. Just keep going.
So this project came out of the lab, and we were an early adopter of this technology, so one of the first to have it. We partnered with a company called Slice as our search partner. This is a great example of technology. It works exactly as advertised. It really is kind of Shazam for shopping. I think the results that it brings back are very good and very relevant. And we still have a problem of getting customers to use it because they're not used to searching that way. So adoption has been an issue with the technology. And the adoption is not because it doesn't work. The adoption is that's just not how they're used to, finding items, I think. And so maybe we were a little too early to the game with it. Maybe the way our UI works is not quite right. We're still experimenting and experimenting and twiddling the user interface, as well as the technology has continued to evolve, and so we expect we'll be able to add some new capabilities and new features here very soon as our partner adds new capabilities to their search engine.
Yeah, we're a big believer in visual search, but we think that the biggest challenge with visual search is what we call multi-item detection. So when you take a photograph, you rarely just take a photograph of an earring and say, find me that earring. You take the whole outfit and you want to know what the outfit looks like. You may care about the pants individually, but you're rarely going to be so isolated on a photograph that you're going to get that microscopic. You're usually at some distance, number one. Number two, you want to make this so brain dead simple that It's on a website. It works exactly the same way as on a desktop, mobile app, whatever it is that's playing. And because it's in a mobile app, the challenge is if you're not already using Neiman's mobile app, you probably don't know easily that this thing exists. It's not their fault. It's just the nature of the funnel that the number of customers that use the Neiman. So what we see is what Pinterest has done is said, no, it's going to be on your desktop. You can just use it online and play with it, and it's free and it's not required by anyone. And so they do a pretty decent job of finding, kind of concepts and products. But what's missing, and they're starting to work on that, and others are working on it as well, is you notice that little white box says, oh, you want to just look at the bag. Well, in fact, what people really want is to look at the entire outfit. So by contrast, there's a startup out there where they just take a photograph of that entire outfit and they find all those pieces. And then you can go drill down those pieces if you want the individual sunglasses or the jewelry or whatever. We think people shop by outfits. You might look at a product, but you want to see what the outfit looks like. And how does this match with what you already own and what you're going to want? So the outfitting, it may actually be more helpful. Number one. And number two, we think that online, that Neiman's might actually benefit from having visual search on your website, i.e., hey, I like this dress, but I'd like to see what else they've got. And it's really hard to find stuff, and not just yours, in any sort of classic e-commerce indexing model that's out there, right? So if you say, I want to find the other blue dresses, you got to go through a fair number of steps in general to do that. So the idea that kind of inbound, inside the fence, inside the tent, visual search would be beneficial to retailers and brands in general is kind of one of the conversations that people are having right now.
So I'll add something that's it's related, adjacent to this discussion, and that is, this is a good example of that I like to use of sometimes the ROI is, you find ROI in these projects like this in the weirdest places. And in the case of Snap Find Shop, the ROI is not actually in the customer's use of the feature, because I don't have enough using it yet. Right, I'm still trying to figure that out. But the project more than pays for itself because it allows us to get this postal discount, because we've implemented technology that allows 2D scanning of pictures, and there's this little U.S. postal program that gives us a discount. And we still ship, mail a lot of catalogs, and so this program more than pays for itself with that discount, which gives me some runway, right, to go and experiment and continue to build, and gives me some time to kind of go solve the problem of adoption.
And buyers are really interested in this. So if you see streetwear that you want to know, hey, how do I find this? The whole buying community is really interested in finding faster ways to find product from other vendors that they want to carry, or looks that are in other people who are wearing the same kind of look, to see if this is a trend or it's a one-off. So the whole idea that you're going to stop typing, blue jeans jacket, is likely over the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, now we come to one of our favorites. How many people have heard of AR and VR? Right. Okay, is anyone using it, by the way, here in this room? One, good, excellent. Which one, AR or VR?
We use it both, but we use it for store. It's not for consumers. We use it for our store design.
Got it, for enterprise use. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, because who else is going to wear those goggles, right?
We have a lot of pictures of people wearing the goggles.
Yeah, they wear it for a little while. Anyway, so let's talk about AR and VR. Scott, where are you on this?
So we're still in the experimentation phase, and it's not likely that my core customer is going to be strapping on VR goggles anytime soon. Maybe when the technology gets to the point where it's like putting on a pair of glasses, we may have something, and it'll probably get there. I'm sure it will get there. But as long as you continue to look like Darth Vader, when you're doing the VR experience, probably not. That doesn't mean that we're not interested in following what's going on and maybe doing some low-cost experiments with it. I think we should stay smart. I think we should stay, in touch with what's going on there, so that when the technology's ready, the train doesn't just pass us by. But for the near term, I think AR is a much more interesting play for us.
Yeah, we would agree on the basis of, first of all, friction is a killer for any user experience, and there's a lot of friction with those stupid goggles. Who wants to wear those things? Number one. Number two, AR by contrast, and we'll kind of put up the little, is, so how many of you have ratings and reviews on your website, on your e-commerce platform today? One. 2, 3 maybe. Full reviews and ratings so that you've got all that, right? How many of you have it in the store? 0, right? Even Amazon has got reviews in their new bookstores. If you look at their bookstores, and it's not digitized. It's actually it's analog. They actually print the reviews and put them on cards, and so you can see them. Our argument is, why on earth are we shopping backwards? E-commerce has advanced our ability to understand the product, the usage of the product, the popularity of the product, and then we walk into a store and we are as blind as bats. We have no idea whether this product stinks and falls apart in 5 minutes. We're trusting the brand, hopefully, right, that they're better than they, but that's not always the case. And I know that you know, and we know that everyone online looks at ratings and reviews before they buy anything. So why doesn't that exist in store? We actually think that AR actually gives the first wave of that potential, because you could very easily hold up your phone to a product and actually have the digitization of your e-commerce ratings and reviews dropped onto that phone. That's a no-brainer and fairly easy to do. And we're going to start seeing a lot of testing in this space. You've got to enrich, not just you, but everyone has to enrich the store experience. Thoughts?
I've spent several years looking at terrible AR demos, at NRF and across the board. The ones where it either looked like a paper doll dress, or if you moved too fast, the top ended up over here while you were over here, and it had to kind of catch up with you. And visually, it didn't look very good, right? It kind of looked like an unreal, digitization of the garment, and at least in luxury retail, we need that thing to look fantastic, right, on you. So it just wasn't ready for us. I have to say that this year I finally started to see some examples that I think are maybe good enough to go try. The geniuses out in the world that are working on this have cracked the nut. In some cases, I think for virtual try-on, I'm very interested in this technology, and I hope to have a project here at some point that actually goes out and gives it a shot. Also virtual makeup has come a long way, and I see some opportunities there as well. Yeah.
Any questions before we move on? Okay. So personalization. Has anyone run across a handbag company that doesn't have personalization today on their website? Do you all know what we're talking about here? Which is the idea that you can customize a bag. Monogramming is really out, folks. People think monogramming is personalization. We're talking about much more than that. One of our startups is actually in a pilot in a major brand store, and they've actually seen an increase in average order value of 20% for the store across the board because of this kind of capability. The idea to personalize product and make it your own is a big deal. Scott?
Yeah, so that's interesting to us as well. But when I thought of when you said personalization, as a topic, I thought about it as actually personalization of the customer experience. So I was thinking at it in a different way. Mm-hmm. I think the picture I put up there is our memory makeover mirrors that we just kind of released over the last holiday, and. Can you think of anything more personalized than a tutorial about how to, use your beauty products that are starring you? Mm-hmm. And so those are the kinds of personal experiences I want to deliver to my customer. Yes, of course, I think there's a play in bespoke, on-demand, apparel and items, that I design myself. But personalization for me first is about personalizing the customer experience.
Yeah, and let me say, I'm not a big believer in custom design. Yeah. I like augmentation. If in the gaming world, only 1% really customize an avatar. The rest just kind of look at what you're doing and kind of like change the color of their shirt or whatever. So true customization, like build a bear or build your own shoe or build whatever, the bag companies that we know, the handbag manufacturers, have stepped away from that because you get some pretty ugly looking product. And people are very upset with themselves that they don't know how to do it, and they get very frustrated. So it's augmentation, adding a strap here or a tassel here. This manufacturer had a scarf complement to it, and you could see how the scarf looked on the bag. and they sold zillions more scarves because now you could see the scarf tied to the bag. They didn't actually customize the scarf, but you could overlay the scarf to the bag. So kind of simple things as opposed to complex. The makeup area is massive. It's going to be huge if it's not already.
Yeah. No, we're seeing great adoption and results with those.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Scott, experiential retail.
Yeah, so I mean, we're all talking about it. I think that I've been able to contribute in a small way at Neiman Marcus, but there's a long way to go, right, in terms of what we could do with on the technology side of the house. The picture I put up there is actually a sports retail store I saw when I was at Euroshop a few weeks back, and a store called Globetrotter, and I thought it was amazing, because you could try everything in that store, and you could try it in the context of the gear, right? If you wanted to try the camper out, it was there and ready for you to go try, and if you wanted to try the dive gear or the kayak out, they had a lake in the middle of the store, I thought it was a really great, really fun concept, and I thought that when I think about experiential retail, I thought that was a great example of it.
And this is an area where people are going to spend a lot of money and lose a lot of money and hopefully get it right the third or fourth time, because usually it's no offense, but it's retailers and merchandisers trying to think what the customer wants instead of help get the customer to tell you what they want. The key is who's doing what and who's starting this process to get you a real experience. I had one major retailer approach me and say, "So you've been in gaming. What if we?" And this was a women's brand. I won't name names, but you've been in gaming. Should we put up video screens and have you watch live video games with your friends? And I'm like, you're a women's brand, no offense, and an older women's brand. This is so off-brand, it's not funny. So maybe GameStop would do something like this, but this doesn't. So this is the challenge: is that the retailers need to listen to the customers and not over-engineer what the customer wants. That's the one challenge I'd see with experiential retail. So there's going to be a lot of failure in that space.
Yeah. So I mean, I think in the end, you still have to be solving a real problem.
Yep.
Right. Removing friction in some way, from the discovery process.
Absolutely. So what's next? We have 6 minutes left. We're going to try to give you a little survey of some things going on that are out there further afield, if that's okay with you all. And hopefully not quite looking like that, but I love that picture.
Well, no, that's the original iLab when I founded it.
Love it.
So, actually, the iLab is actually 5 years old now. Coming up here in August, it'll be 5 years old. And as far as retail innovation labs go, that's pretty long in the tooth. If you go, have a look at, you've seen a lot of major retailers' innovation programs come to life and then be blown up, maybe come to life a second time, be blown up again, in some cases. There's a lot of volatility.
There's a lot of spend. People spend a lot of money chasing things that we just don't think is a good use of money in most cases. And you guys have been very efficient with your
Well,
stuff.
I think so. I mean, look, I'm the entire staff of the Innovation Lab. So one of the reasons I think I'm still around after 5 years is, when they're running around trying to figure out where they can save money, I'm not very interesting. I don't have enough zeros after the comma for them to really take notice of me.
You're not in a 3-comma club?
We are very efficient, and we are sort of very from the ground up approach to it, as opposed to a big, separate organization, with its own facilities and lots of money, lots of staff and lots of expense.
So here's some things we put out there that we think are the future. This is actually a mobile pop-up. It's 6 by 6. It has 2 dressing rooms associated with it. It does $10,000 a square foot. It sits anywhere you want to put it. This is in Highland Park. No, this is actually in Kansas City, but in Highland Park, they're right in front of Chanel and Dior for free. This same pop-up is actually going to be in Bryant Park tomorrow night. Manduka is putting up a yoga experience in Bryant Park with Susan J. Komen, and you'll be able to actually buy yoga products through that mobile pop-up in Bryant Park. It installs in 22 minutes. So the future, this is an architect, by the way. She doesn't know anything about retail, honestly. She's quite good at it now, but she came at it from an architecture perspective. And so what she's architected is, pops up in 22 minutes, self-powered. It's approved by MTA, all of the government organizations. They love this idea because emerging designers can get in there for next to nothing and showcase product without the big kiosk costs. So the idea of store to customer is what we're talking about here, is move the store to the customer. Where's the customer? Customer's in Bryant Park, right? The customer's in Madison Square Park. The customer's in parks, especially when it's nice. So go to them. You just have to make it relevant and interesting, but go to them. And that's, we think, is a major movement forward in how stores, reinvent themselves. Scott?
It certainly gives opportunities for experimentation, for, kind of the big, department store behemoth that we are, right? I mean, I'm very interested in the concept. We haven't done it, but it's certainly interesting to me. The other interesting part of it, is that all this, kind of very cutting-edge technology is baked in to this pop-up in a box, right? The video analytics and beacons and other things that you need to actually go measure engagement and maybe prove ROI, which is, tantamount to, being able to do more of these things are sort of baked in. So it was a very, very interesting concept for me as well.
And there's no inventory. It's all drop ship. And people are perfectly happy with it because they're in a park. They don't want to carry stuff around. They're very happy to have it shipped to you. The next one is store as plant. We talked briefly about this. Does anyone know what this machine is? Can I just blurt it out? What is it? Yes? A 3D printer? Sort of. Kind of. Almost. Close. Anyone else? Knitting. Yeah. Right? And
it's a 3D garment printer, basically, but it's doing it through traditional knitting. Yeah.
Right. It uses needles. Right? It does a whole garment with no seam. Helmut Lang has this dress. Who else? Theory's doing something in this space. Uniqlo is doing something in this space. It's a seamless garment. It's produced in 35 minutes. There's no waste. And it's silent. So literally the machine maybe is like 6-7 chairs long and stands about 5 feet high. It's not cheap, and it's early days, but it produces, when you talk about sustainability, when you talk about localized production, and ultimately the ability to say, I want the yarn from that small farm in Austria that's shepherded by orphans, so you can get into the transparency of supply chain by picking different yarns and colors very easily. It's all the rate. You're going to see a lot of this coming down the pike very shortly. It's called Shimaseki, is the Japanese manufacturer, and it's they sell about probably Nike, the Flyknit shoe. Do you know the tops of the Flyknit are produced on this machine? Just to give you some perspective. Yeah.
Is this going to be for stores and brands or people?
So we think it's way too big and expensive for people. The question was stores or people. We actually think it's stores even in DCs. So you don't start with a store, although it's kind of sexy and cool, but it's expensive. 150 grand to put in a store, better sell a lot of product, right? Scott?
It would fit in, it fits into the personalization discussion.
It very much does.
It fits into the experiential retail discussion we just had. Maybe there is ROI there, even at that price point, but boy, we'd have to look at it really hard.
Yeah, and it takes a lot to actually, this is a machine that, if any of you are familiar with MS-DOS, back in the day, the technology of API interface is like MS-DOS compared to Mac Pros or whatever today. It's very backward. But it's amazing technology. It's just produced by Japanese, and no offense to the Japanese in the room, but they're not the best software designers in the world. They're amazing at hardware.
I can tell every year I have to do a top 10 at NRF for our CEO, and this was on my list for that as something interesting to look at. I have to tell you.
Yeah. Okay, so that is, we look at that, 0.00. We just ended on time.
Perfect.
Any questions that we can share with you all or talk about? Yes.
Yeah, Scott, on the visual search application, was it a hurdle to create that database, or did you do everything in your store, or was there sort of a critical mass that you?
Well, we have a pretty, a pretty big digital business. So, all the, kind of picture, the visual assets that we needed to do visual search, we kind of already had for our online business, and Slice just had to ingest that stuff and do whatever kind of meta tagging they do, on the actual pictures. Yeah.
Yes.
We're a brand who happily heavily sells at Neiman Marcus, and we saw a platform you integrated in .com. We saw it maybe a little over a year ago called Creator that you were using in lookbooks on like Carolyn Herrera's landing page, where you could actually tap the dress, the purse, whatever it was, and add to cart there. And we've implemented that in our site. We've seen tremendous lift. Have you seen that? And are you interested in exploring sort of what I call or improving what I call legacy online shopping, the way we've got these boring, out-of-context catalogs?
I would be happy to hook you up with the right people to talk about that is my answer, because I didn't work on that project specifically, but my new boss oversees all that. I now report to the CTO, which is a new position at Neiman Marcus, and so now I think I have better inroads onto the online and digital stuff that we've done, and I'd be happy to connect you to the right people.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.